So I'm starting us out?
Yes, you are.
Okay. Hey, I'm Lenita, and I'm here with my friend and colleague, Andrew. And we think that talking about faith questions are some of the most important questions that we can talk about. And that's what we want to do in this podcast. Now, we're not going to pretend at all that we can answer these questions comprehensively or tie them up in a neat bow for you. But what we hope is that with this podcast, we're actually sparking you to have conversations of your own. We're both pastors, so no surprise, we're going to be talking about Jesus a lot. And hey, if you have any questions that you would like us to talk about here, you can send them to us at questions@stpauls.ca. So first question for today, Andrew, is one that we get. I'm a good person, so why do I need Jesus?
So that does feel a bit of a brick wall. So in football, there's two kinds of blocks, basically. One is pass blocking, and that's kind of where you stand back on your feet and people try to get at your quarterback and he's trying to get rid of the ball. It's kind of a passive way to block. Run blocking is another thing. Run blocking is some big mountain of humanity's coming at you and is just going to smoke you. And this feels a bit like a run block. When it comes to run blocking, you just like get out of the way, don't get hurt kind of. I was never a defensive player, obviously. But the question feels like that, like kind of arms folded. And who are you to tell me that I'm not good enough without God? So I'd be like, hey, I'm not going to poke that bear. I want to be careful with this person who maybe has come into this from a past experience of faith or has just heard something and they're like, yeah, you guys annoy me, you're religious people, you think you're all better than everybody else. So I would probably avoid it. I think some of the responses that people give to those sorts of things are to try to make the person feel less good about themselves. And you know, God's perfect and no one makes God's standard, which is very biblical and it's very true. Nobody can be good enough. But I'm not sure that's the right way to do it. Jesus certainly clarified things. Someone came to him and said, good teacher. And Jesus, he didn't correct him like the guy had made a mistake. He just said, just be clear about this. There's only one who's good and it's God. So the whole thought of good it's close to God's heart. But I had a conversation with a guy, firefighter actually, maybe a year ago, and we were talking about this, and he just said those very same words, like, I don't need God to be good. I'm good all by myself. And so I can't remember how I responded. I wish now that I'd responded this way. Okay, who was it that said that good was the main objective? Like, what is it that human beings are for? I think, you know, we both have read a book recently called Super Communicators, and the piece that shocked me when I started the book, and still I'm just about done it, is his invitation to ask lots of questions. Apparently, super communicators ask 10 times more questions than the rest of us mortals. So I think anytime someone comes after us or has a question, not that you're trying to dodge it, but it's interesting to get at what's below that. So my question would be, you're good enough for what? And maybe for what are human beings designed? What's our purpose? And so my comeback in other situations has been to say, what if being good actually isn't at the top of God's list? What if having a relationship with us is the most important thing to God? And the whole point of us being on the planet wasn't that God would have little perfect girls and perfect boys running around, everybody's good, but that they're in a relationship with Him, the living God. So if I finish out like this, you're parent to a couple of adult kids. I am too. And when they were little, you know, maybe there was an option. There was never an option with the boys. They could have been good. You know, they always folded their laundry. They always made their beds. They always picked up after themselves. But they never would talk. Never said anything. Didn't even admit your existence. You know, would you choose that kind of good, which is what a person who's saying is, I don't need God, I'm good. Would you choose that kind of child over one who probably left the dishes dirty in the sink, but came home and talked your ear off and wanted you to tell you all about their day and let you know you mattered in their lives, and that relationship was rich. So I would probably move it that way towards a relationship, because it's obviously hackles are up, and people are feeling a little guarded. Yeah. Kind of similar. The question to you would be a person that says, "Hey, I'm spiritual. Why would I need Jesus? I've got spiritual interests. So why jam the whole Christian message on me?"
Yeah, that's good. And I yes, we would say for sure you are spiritual. That is how God has made us. It's like He's created us to be in a relationship with Him, and we are made to run on His love. Or it's like plants are made to grow in the sun and with water, and we are designed to be in relationship with Him. And so these longings that we have for things like meaning and significance and even life after death, this is a sign that we are spiritual beings. And those longings are only met by God and His love. The problem that we have is that we've turned away from God. This is what we would say as Christians. We've turned away from Him, and we try to fill those longings with things that are actually going to destroy our soul in the long run. So they can be things that we would think of as bad, like addictions, but it can also be our own version of spirituality. And that's a little bit like taking a plant and feeding it soda water. It looks like the same thing, but it's actually going to destroy it. The good news of Jesus is that He's come to live among us, die, and has risen again as King, so that we can actually be in this restored relationship with God that will fulfill our spiritual longings. And so that's why we say that if you're spiritual, yes, for sure, that's a good thing. And Jesus is the perfect response to your longings of spirituality.
Seems like, this might be a better plan than just being secular. There is no God, there is no hope. This is all bleak. And so you'd say to someone, I think, and there's some stories like this in the Bible, I think, where people are hungry for God and they're sort of making a move there and not entirely comfortable. So I think about Paul at Mars Hill and how he's acknowledging some spiritual interest, some appetite, and he just goes after that differently than he would a whole bunch of people who are sitting in a Jewish synagogue or gathered around the temple. So here you are in conversations with people. Sounds like we might have a distraction.
We could have a distraction here. I'm not sure what we'd want to do with that, but that's okay. Jay, welcome to the podcast.
How's that podcast going for you,
Let's
dude?
ask you a question.
Jay, yeah. Photobomb for sure.
I love it. Next question then. So, why would I become a Christian if it's so limiting? This is a question we hear from time to time.
Yeah, or even I heard it worded differently recently, which was, hey, this is all sound really good, but there's a bunch of things I want to do first before I buy into this Christian stuff, before I let God be Lord of my money. There's a bunch of things I want to spend my money on. Before I let God be Lord of my sex life, there's a couple people I want to sleep with. And so I'm going to get back to you, but just not right now. So it sounds really good. I think this is a really good idea to go after this. So I think it's worth asking questions. What is it that you think you would lose? Or what is it that you think you're gaining by being distant from the God who loves you the most? Where is it that you think you're going to have, if I put it this way, more fun? Like I can't wait to spend my money on more things for me, more vacations, and then I don't have to give to the poor. I can't wait to hold on to my resentments for a few more months so I don't have to forgive people. I can't wait to sleep with more people so that, anybody that thinks that through says, man, that's a whole world of hurt and heartache for me and for the people that I'm doing this to. So for me, it might be an opportunity to ask a question about what matters most to you right now. Because this would be the language of the Bible, and I think we would resonate with it. And I think actually many in the world would resonate. Something is uppermost in your mind. Something is the object of your worship. People like Tim Keller, forget Tim Keller, the Bible, talk about idols. This thing that has primary position in my life. And so I'd be interested in saying, okay, you know the claims of Jesus you've just articulated. Sins forgiven, shame contended with, guilt departed, new mandate of love, and eternity secured. And what is it that you have that you want to hang on to that would put those offers in second place? That would be a place for a question, I think, for me. So here's another one. If I become a Christian, will that make my life better? Is it going to be perfect now? Is this what you're promising me?
Well, yes and no. I think it depends on what you're asking, will my life be better now? If we expect that by becoming Christians that our life circumstances are going to be exactly what we expect, we'll always have enough money, we'll have the best job, our kids will be healthy, we'll have a great spouse. There are no guarantees that way. Jesus doesn't promise that. In fact, when he calls us to himself, he puts it in terms like, come and deny yourself. You are going to be giving up some things here. And so we look at his life, and it was not a trouble-free life at all. I mean, he had friends betray him, and he died a violent death. And then his followers after him as well. They were in prison. They went through some really difficult things, and that's been the experience of Christians around the world and through the ages. But Jesus does promise us abundant life, and so this is the life of love and joy and peace that he grows in us. It's the life we've always wanted. And this is the life that we can have no matter what the circumstances are. And so we can't control our circumstances, but he is with us and growing this beautiful life in us. And that is better than going through life without him.
I'm glad you put it that way, because I think for a while Christians only talked about death, and we forgot that we weren't just saved from something, but we were saved for something. Yeah. So I love that there's that life piece. And still, though, we might be among the first generations who've understood ourselves. I don't know, we live like we're immortal. Other generations sort of knew they were going to die. Yeah. You know, just even childbirth alone was a bit of a dice roll. You know, is mom going to make it through? Is mom and baby going to make it through? And only in our generation have we had this sort of expectation of whatever life expectancy. And so it does sound morbid, but there is this piece of me that wants to say, that death part, you're going to want to have an answer for that. You know, it's a rare occasion for leading a funeral where someone gets up who has been disinterested in God forever and ever and ever. It's a rare occasion when they hold that through a funeral. Usually what they say is, our loved one, our brother, our sister, our mom, our dad is in a better place now. I'm like, whoa, hey, how do we get here, given what all you've said here? But there's this natural thing about human beings that believes there's more. There has to be more. We just cannot be a bag of cells and waste with an expiry date. There has got to be more. There's got to be more to us. So anyway, I think thanks for putting it like that.
I like that. Okay, so last question for today. How do I know if I'm a Christian? So I've decided to follow Jesus, but I've got these questions. How do I know I'm really a Christian?
We bantered back a little bit forth about, is it a prayer? Just pray this prayer, boom, you're in. And then you don't have to worry about anything else. And I think even in one iteration you worded it like, how do I know if I'm a Christian? If I don't really care to read my Bible and I don't feel that passionate about church, like what if my desires aren't following the commitment I made? Or maybe more to the point, I'm still doing some things I thought I'd stop doing. I used to struggle with this, and maybe for 3 weeks after my baptism or after my commitment to Jesus, man, it was like the light shone, the clouds parted, and I just lived a wonderful life. And then all of a sudden, this stuff came back like a hurricane. And so am I actually a Christian? I think we talked about this on Sunday. It was just a farce. My baptism, a farce. And you know that you're in a battle, that there's an evil one who wants to take you out. And especially for someone who's sort of newer into the game, but for all of us, we all got these bullseyes painted on our chests. And so we know we're in a battle. I guess my answer to that person would largely be an illustration I would use from being married. So it's going to be something like 33 years ago in about a week or two, I stood in front of a crowd of people, and I was prepared to stand in front of 8 billion people on the planet and say, Colleen Lynn Brown, I take you to be my wife. And she said the same thing to me, Andrew, I take you to be my husband. And then that's it. We're married. Before that, like 3 minutes before that, we weren't married. And all of a sudden, we were married, and husband and wife, and declared so. There have been too many times in my life where I've not behaved like the husband I'm in covenant to be, that I promised to be. So on those moments, what do I do? I got to go run back to the preacher. I said, preacher, we got to get married again because the first one didn't take. We need to do over and start all over again. You say, no. You would say to me, Lenita, my friend, you say, Andrew, no, you're married. That's settled. You learn how to be married, and you can do this better. I mean, you might not say it that way, but you can do it. So have at this. My status before the Heavenly Father, before Jesus who died on the cross for me, is a settled deal. I entered into a covenant that used his blood to write the deal out. And so he knows who I am, where I am, and how I stand before him. And there'll be some things I'm going to have to work out. In fact, probably every 5 years of my married life, you may say the same about yours. I'm like, oh, now I understand what I was saying when I was 25 years old and just staring at this gorgeous woman. Now I understand. Okay, I'm ready to get married now. But this is the way God works. He doesn't ask us to, give our marriage vows at the end of our lives when we finally know what we're getting into. Just like he doesn't ask us to get baptized at the end of our Christian faith because now you know what you're committing to. He's like, no, that's a kickoff point. That's where the game is going to start. And you are going to rest in this confidence that the living God of all glory has you. Now figure it out. It's like being married. You are going to rest in the fact that you are married. That's not up for grabs. You're married, settled.
In the Bible, when God talks about his relationship with us, one of the images that he uses is of a marriage and of he being married to an unfaithful partner, and he is never letting go. He's chasing after after us, and I just love that steadfast love of his. So that's a great image that you've given us there.
Yeah. What is this thing rooted in?
Yeah.
Right? If it's rooted in my performance or our performance, it's never going to be enough. And God knows that. And so instead he says, this is rooted in my love. I love that you would remind us of that. I think the Old Testament term is hesed love, this steadfast love, this pursuing, relentless, not changing love. And sadly, up and down like toilet seats sometimes, we can go spiritually, and God says, okay, I got it. Learn to stay close. Let's learn to walk closely. This has been the beat of God's heart since the garden. I want to walk with you. And so, the end of the story, the end of Revelation, or the beginning of the new story, is this bride coming out of heaven, and now the dwelling place of God is with women and men. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks for the conversation. And thanks for the feedback that you've been giving us on this. If you have any more, we'd love to hear it. And again, if you want to send us questions, you can send them to questions@stpauls.ca.